When you ask a man what makes a real man, you'll likely get a variety of high-minded responses about what it means to be a good man. So, for instance, they'll say something like, a real man is responsible. A real man cares for others. A real man never loses his temper. And a real man is honorable. That sounds good. But when you ask those same men what their favorite guy movies are, without skipping a beat, they'll say, oh yeah, Scarface, Goodfellas, Fight Club, Heat, John Wick, Collateral, Sicario, Terminator, and so on. You just think, Now don't get me wrong, I love those movies too, but I'm pretty sure Al Pacino was a murdering drug lord in Scarface. I think everyone in Goodfellas were ruthless racketeers. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton were basically domestic terrorists in Fight Club. Robert De Niro and Val Kilmer were cop-killing bank robbers in Heat. And all the lead characters in all those other films were assassins, either human or cyborg. So, what's going on here? Well, despite the moral posturing, men are drawn to these characters precisely because they're still manly. Even though they might not be what we'd call good men. But this is really nothing new, right? Men have always been drawn to the tales of outlaws, of rebels, of pirates, of Vikings, bold thieves, and dangerous men. And so have women. Don't look at me like that. You know who you are. All your naughty billionaire, Scottish Highlander, werewolf, vampire stuff.
Now, Mr. Sassenach, I must have you.
In his book, The Way of Men, author Jack Donovan discusses sort of why men still hold such immoral men in high esteem. So in it, he writes about this, and he says that bad men tend to operate in brutal, indelicate, and unmoderated boys' clubs, and they seem particularly concerned with the business of being men, right? Gangsters are these status-conscious, aggressive, tactically oriented, ballsy, brother-bonded men's men, right? The lone hitmen are portrayed as capable, but these like smooth operators who are masters of their dangerous craft, doing the things that have been demanded of men throughout human history. So like in short, they're not good men, but they are good at being men. Notice there's a difference there. So let's talk about these. So being a good man is a philosophical ideal based off of living the higher moral virtues. So what are these higher moral virtues? Well, for instance, in ancient Greece, Plato wrote in his book, The Republic, that the four most important virtues were wisdom, bravery, temperance, and justice. And justice would be better translated today to like justness. So think like moral fair-mindedness or kind of righteousness. So Aristotle in his book, Rhetoric, and his other one, Nicomachean Ethics, he says that there's 8 virtues. So this is justice, courage, temperance, generosity, self-worth, gentleness, and prudence. The great Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius gave 6. He says modesty, fortitude, compassion, courage, strength, and self-reliance. Virtues are also discussed extensively in the Bible, with what was called the 4 cardinal virtues being wisdom, or sometimes, depending on the translation, sometimes it's prudence, and then righteousness, right, which is kind of like justness, like we talked about, but also fortitude and temperance. So such moral virtues certainly made men good men, but a man can be a good man without being particularly good at being a man, right? So like being good at being a man isn't a philosophical ideal, but it's rather about a man performing the male role competently, right? That is, that he's a good protector, a good provider, and a good procreator. And that he's demonstrating certain virtues and behaviors that have been revered by other men across cultures and time. So being a good protector and provider and procreator, it goes well beyond just like buying a firearm, putting food on the table, and producing offspring, right? Like in my upcoming men's program, we actually dive deep into each of these. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to keep them concise. But just know, though, that there's much more to all this. So being a good protector means being capable, being vigilant, and being prepared. It's about taking proactive steps to protect yourself and your loved ones, physically, financially, intellectually, spiritually, and also emotionally. Being a good provider is about creating stability, right? In terms of like nutrition, housing, finances, and future. It's about looking ahead and creating a vision of the lifestyle that you desire for yourself, for your family, and even for future generations. And then working as diligently with as much industry as you can muster to manifest that into reality. Being a good procreator is about securing the affections of an esteemed woman and then forming a deep and meaningful relationship with her, right? Starting a family together and then being a diligent father who's involved and invested in the raising of your children in order to ensure a solid generational legacy. Being good at being a man also entails the demonstration of virtues and behaviors that are revered amongst nearly every man in nearly every culture across time. So in his book, Manhood in the Making, the distinguished professor of anthropology, I think his name is Dr. David D. Gilmore, but he explores this concept, sort of studying men on every inhabited continent, from hunter-gatherer bands to horticulturists, from pastoral tribes to fishermen to peasants, and even citizens from post-industrial civilizations. And what's cool is that in all of these places, he found significant continuities of masculinity across cultural boundaries. So whether in the Mediterranean or Micronesia, from Scandinavia to sub-Saharan Africa, he found that men sought to cultivate and demonstrate similar virtues and behaviors. And the more that they did so, the higher in esteem they were held by other men. So these were taking action, taking risks, facing danger, working hard, solving problems, exhibiting strength, courage, selfless generosity, and mastery of valuable skills. Now, most of these, it's kind of funny, but most of these aren't even moral in nature, right? But they're more about boldly doing deeds and showcasing strength, courage, and mastery in the process. Manly traits which we inherently revere. It's why we root for Brad Pitt in Troy, or De Niro in Heat, or DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can. It's why, despite their immorality, we can't with a straight face call Genghis Khan, Blackbeard the Pirate, Doc Holliday, or D.B. Cooper unmanly, right? They might not have been good men, but they sure seem to have been good at being men. The masculine ideal, however, sort of lies in the combination of these two aspirations, right? And it's to this that all men should strive. Few, in my opinion, have actually embodied this combination better than the great Theodore Roosevelt, right? A statesman, warrior, author, explorer, hunter, and conservationist, right? He's the guy who led the charge up Kettle Hill. He wrote over 30 books. He became a judo brown belt while president, mind you, right? He established the national park system and once killed a cougar with a knife. God, I love this man. He busted trusts, he captured outlaws in the Dakotas. He was a loyal husband and a doting father, and he was honest to a T. I mean, what other man won both the Nobel Peace Prize and the Congressional Medal of Honor? I'll give you a hint. None. Roosevelt blazed his own manly trail that's certainly worthy of emulation, but we shouldn't strive to be sort of like mere copies of him, right? For he was his own man, as all men should be. Yet, we should be inspired to live as boldly as he, right? And to reach such levels of balanced manhood that he attained. Hence, why my upcoming men's program is called the Roosevelt Society, which, by the way, you'll be hearing much more about as we get closer and closer to launch. So all this said, consider where you currently sit. Are you in greater measure a good man or a man who's good at being a man, right? And then pick one virtue from your weaker side and try to spend the next week or two exercising it, right? So like, if you consider yourself a good man, then maybe you try to take more risks. And if you consider yourself maybe more so a man who's good at being a man, maybe you strive to be a bit more temperate in your vices. That is, of course, if you have any. But then each night you want to reflect back on the day to a time where maybe you had the opportunity to exhibit that virtue and to what degree, you embodied it. And so if you fell short, okay, don't beat yourself up, right? Just map out what you do differently next time and then do better. And like with anything, practice makes perfect. But if you just assess yourself each day, you can kind of see that growth and the cultivation of that virtue. And along the way, just remember, you aren't stuck being the person you are right now. You can cultivate new virtues and you can become a better, more balanced man. And in doing so, you can literally change your life, right? Just embrace self-growth, hold yourself accountable as you strive to be both a good man and a man who's good at being a man. All right, folks, see you next time.
Thank you folks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also, if you want to further support my efforts, you can do so on Patreon or buy some gear for the Modern Frontier for the Man vs. History Outfitter Shop. See you folks next time. Before I go, just want to make sure that I thank my Patreon patrons. Special thank you to my gold tier patrons, The Innocents, Ashley Gertensen, Hurtin Wade, Man vs. Moose, Bryce V, Cyber, Will S. Baker, Rich Christensen, Comrade Krieger, Blake Graham, Joshua Horton, Archie Dack, Dawson E, Zon Capriza, Noah Ovens, Noah 5943, Jigsaw, Coco Rockout, Occam's Ghost, Reese Yerby, Ari Bocklers, Mythical Beast 60, Gavin Abernathy, and Jake Bram. Also want to make sure that I thank my silver and bronze tier patrons. Thank you all for all your support. Let's keep growing. Let's keep doing what we're doing. See you all next time.